We are doing something a little bit different today on the podcast. I am so thrilled to have back on the show Kym Kent, who is a veteran homeschooling mom of six
Mhm.
children. She has already graduated four of her six off into the world and is the founder of Extend Homeschool Tutorial, a homeschooling collaborative in Maryland. Kym also has an undergraduate degree in economics from the University of Maryland. And I'm so delighted that she is now a regular writer for us at the Foundation for
Mm,
Economic Education, fee.org,
mhm.
writing about homeschooling, education entrepreneurship, and unconventional education more broadly. In fact, her debut article just was appeared earlier this week on fee.org talking about yes, you can homeschool your kids to college. And that is the topic of not only today's show, but what Kym and I are planning over the next few weeks is a series of podcast episodes
Mhm.
all about homeschooling your kids to college. And, Kym, well, let me welcome you first, Kym, to back onto the show. So glad you're here.
Thank you for having me, Kerry. It is just my absolute joy. And this subject is so near and dear to my heart. So I am so grateful for the opportunity for us to really share our collective experiences that we can really give a lot of hope to homeschoolers, to alternate eds, families to know that they can do this, that this road to going to high school is completely achievable. So I'm so grateful for the opportunity to do this and share this with you.
I'm so excited too. And I have to give you all the credit, Kym, because it was your idea to do a podcast series around
Mhm,
this topic. And I think it's such
mhm.
a brilliant idea.
Thank you.
I am immersed in the college application process for the first time this year
Mhm.
with my daughter, Molly, who
Yeah.
is finishing her homeschooling experience. She's been homeschooled her entire life. This is her senior
Mhm.
year.
Yes.
And you have gone through it before, but like you'll share in a moment, it's a little bit
Mhm.
different this time with
It
your
is.
fifth child, Samuel, who's also
Yes.
a senior in his
Right.
homeschooling experience and going through
Right.
that college application process now as well.
Yeah.
And you had this suggestion that wouldn't it be fun if we have this sort of series of conversations from our
Mm-hmm.
perspective as homeschooling
Mm-hmm.
moms with current seniors in homeschool high school
Mm-hmm.
looking to go to college and kind of
Right.
going through this process. So, what we're
Right.
planning over this podcast series are sort of taking listeners and viewers through this plan, sort of
Yeah.
from how do you think about your high school homeschooling experience?
Mm-hmm.
What classes should you be thinking about? Structuring the high school years if college
Mm-hmm.
is a possibility, or if you want
Mm-hmm.
to keep it open as a possibility for your
Mm-hmm.
kids. Then we'll be talking about the actual application process through the Common App and some other application portals.
Yes.
Then sort of college acceptances and what that process is like. And then
Exciting.
ultimately college decisions, in which our plan
Mm-hmm.
is to invite Molly and Samuel to come on the show and
Yay.
give a big reveal, but also sort of share their reflections on the
Yeah.
college application
Yeah.
admission process. So
Yeah.
such a
So exciting.
wonderful series of shows that we have planned. But let's
Yeah.
start, Kym, with
Mm-hmm.
where we are now,
Mm-hmm.
because I am brand new to this. As I said,
Yeah.
Molly has been homeschooled her whole life. She's my
Mm-hmm.
oldest of four
Mm-hmm.
children.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the first time I've been through this. And gosh, I got to tell you, I feel like I didn't know anything,
Yeah.
even though I went to college and graduate
Right.
school. I didn't
Right.
know anything about the college application
Right.
process today, and
Yes.
especially applying as a homeschooler, unconventionally
Yeah.
educated
Mm-hmm.
student. You have been through this before, but maybe you could share a little bit with us, not only about your experience
Mm-hmm.
previously with sending
Mm-hmm.
four older kids to
Yeah.
college and career, but
Yeah.
also maybe what's a little bit different now with Samuel.
Sure, sure. And you're right. In the back of my head, I hear that song, It's a Whole New World, right? For our kids. There are a number of reasons why it is literally a whole new world. One is that, we're post-COVID, you know, and so that brings its own share of things. And then, of course, you have this thing called the Common App. I know we're going to be talking about that later. But if I go back and look at my experience right now, and as you've said, Kerry, that this is your first, right? This is your first with Molly going through this whole college application experience. For me, even though Samuel is my fifth child, in a number of ways, I have firsts as well. The very first thing, and I think I shared this with you a while back ago, is that my husband passed in 2022. And he was always the one that walked through the kids through the college application process. I was just, yeah, I did the education piece, but he did a lot of the, okay, what do you want to do? Let's do the FAFSA, those kinds of things that were in his wheelhouse. And so for me with Samuel, this is the first time that I'm actually the one at the helm having to walk alongside him in this college application process. My other students, my other kids, when they graduated, they also only had like one or two colleges that they really wanted to go to. They kind of had their mindset, this is where I'm going, this is where I'm applying. And so we didn't have, this list, which Samuel, I will share with you, I think I shared with you before, he had initially had 16 colleges on his list. Ah, so, the whole idea of going from one or two to now looking at 16, and then he was whittling them down, but listen, whittling them down for him meant now he only has 13 colleges that he's applying to. So again, now here I am in this position of walking alongside him in this journey where we're going through a significant process of whittling it down, of doing the college application process. The other thing for us that's very new, and I'm sure that you're now experiencing this as well, is Common App. With my other kids, Common App, for some of them, Common App didn't even exist. They didn't do that. And so Samuel is my first child that we are literally walking through that Common App process and what that looks like when you're outside of the traditional model of education. There are some differences there. So all of those things have created what is on some level a new experience for me, even though Samuel is my fifth child that's graduating, been homeschooled all the way through, but graduating and going on to college.
Yeah, I think it's amazing, Kim, that you see that variation and change even
Hmm.
among your older children
Sure.
now to Samuel. And then if we go way back to when we
Hmm.
went to college, and
Right.
those parents who are listening, I mean, it's like night and day. I'd love to hear your experience. I applied to college in the mid
Hmm.
1990s, of course,
Same.
pre
Hmm.
Common App for sure, but
For sure.
pre e-filing of any application. And I
Right.
remember the typewriter, writing out my application, requesting first the application from the college you want to apply to,
Hmm.
typing it out on the typewriter, manually
Hmm.
collecting the sealed
Yes.
letters of recommendation from
Yes.
teachers, and
Hmm.
then going to the post office
Yes.
and hoping that it makes it there, and then waiting for the letter in your mailbox. So
Right.
it's a totally different world.
It is.
What's your
It
memory
is.
of
Yeah.
applying?
Right. And so I want you to just brace yourself. Everybody, I tell everybody, hold your heart when I tell you this. So I graduated in 1984. So yes, I know. People say, wait a second, how old were you when you graduated? Yes, I was young, but I was 17. So I'm gonna let you all that are listening do the math, okay? And then you can write later, do the comments later. Hopefully they're good comments. But for me, there's another little interesting wrinkle there. When I came to Maryland for my senior year of high school. That is a whole other story. I was in New York. I grew up in New York City. And so I was in the New York City public education school system. And so here I was, my senior year of high school. My mother, God bless her and God rest her soul, said, New York is getting crazy and I need to get my daughter out of New York. And so I came to Maryland as a high school senior. And that let's talk, if we want to talk about the culture shock and everything else there. But then, back then, 1984, when I graduated, yeah, we were using the typewriter.
Yes.
We were going, I knew I wanted to go to University of Maryland. That was the only school I was going to. And that was it. And so I marched up, went to the University of Maryland, went to their admissions office, filled out. I know nobody can remember this, but went and got the paper application and you filled out the paper application and you signed it and you handed it in to them. And then again, of course, you wait by your mailbox for that, notice that you've been accepted. And then you go and you call them. There were a lot of phone calls to the University of Maryland. All the things that nowadays seem like, that seems like that was something down from the dinosaur age. But that
Yeah.
was my experience. But then you look at these kids now and how everything is digital. We live we live in a digital world. Everything these days is digital. There are some things, though, that we do need to teach our kids, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about these things that we do need to teach our kids, even though they're in a digital world. There's some things that benefit them. Picking up a phone call, picking up the phone, making an actual phone call, not just texting, not just sending an email. There are some benefits when we teach our kids how to do that. And believe me when I tell you, and we'll be talking about this, that is definitely a part of your college experience, especially from this side, when you're in the non-traditional side, when you don't have the high school guidance counselor that's doing a lot of things for you. We're doing it ourselves.
Yeah, we're gonna spend much of today's episode talking
Hmm.
about high school preparation.
Yeah.
But something that you said really stuck out to me, Kim. You said you only applied to the University of Maryland. That was
Hmm.
the school that you had your sights set on. For
Hmm.
me, I only applied to Bowdoin College, small liberal arts college in Maine. And today, that would be sort of reckless if we think about
Right.
it, right? Like
Right.
it's just such a different world with, especially with the Common App that actually makes it
Hmm.
much easier to apply to more
Hmm.
schools. You said that Samuel initially had 16 schools, whittled it down to 13. Molly applied to 19 schools. And just a different world from our
Yeah.
experience,
Yeah.
choosing that one
That
college,
one.
and
That
then
one.
hoping it worked out. So yeah, it's
Mm.
just great to sort of think about some of the changes that have
Mhm.
happened over the past several decades.
Sure.
But if we talk now about high school prep,
Hmm.
and what that experience was like, maybe you could
Yes.
start, Kim, and then I can share my experience with
Hmm.
Molly and kind of the high school years. But for
Hmm.
you, and of course, you run Extend Homeschool
Right.
Tutorial, which is sort of well positioned to
Right.
prepare students who
Right.
want to go off to college or want to go
Hmm.
off to career, entrepreneurship, all
Yep.
kinds of different pathways, but it's
Yeah.
sort of baked into your business
It
model.
is.
Maybe you can talk a little bit about high school prep for
Sure.
specifically homeschoolers, homeschooling
Sure.
families, and others who are learning outside of a
Hmm.
conventional classroom if
Sure.
college is on the horizon.
Sure. And one of the things that I will say is that when we talk about college prep, a lot of times we do tend to focus on high school. But one of the things that I like to share with folks is that it actually begins earlier than that. It actually begins in those elementary years. And why I say that is because in the elementary years, you're teaching those fundamental skills that they're going to be able to then take, that's going to allow them to go on to college and be successful or go on to any career, business, whatever. When we, in the early years, focus on those fundamentals, on writing, huge, communication, math skills, those are the fundamental things that actually begin long before high school ever happens. That's elementary, and middle. And so by the time they're entering into high school, right, you want to make sure, and that's one of the things that we do in our program. Ours is elementary, middle, and high. We start in those early years teaching them grammar, teaching them writing, teaching them how to communicate, teaching them those basic math skills so that they can be strong in them. And what that does is that sets them on a very strong foundation for when it comes time to do those applications, when it comes time to be able to demonstrate that, hey, I can function in a college environment. It really does begin back then. And so as a result, a lot of our programming and a lot of the curriculum that our tutors select are designed to really focus on that and help those students become not just, to me, I say not just good writers, but great writers. And I will share with you that some of the programs that we do use Shirley Grammar early on. We use excellence in writing early on. We use portions of Lost Tools in writing. Why? Because we want our kids to be able to excel when they get into the college experience. One of the things that I found, and I don't know if you heard this or experienced this when you've talked to other folks, but I've actually had the opportunity to talk to some college admissions counselors. And one of the things that they're really shocked by is how many students come to them and they're not able to do the basics in writing. That to us at Extend is not acceptable. It's just not. And so one of the things that we have always made sure is one of our core tenets is that we want to make sure that when you leave our program, you're well equipped because communication is one of those skills that you'll use no matter what you do. You will use that for the rest of your life. You use it as a mother. You use it as a student. You use that as a business person. You use it as an employee. You use it as somebody who runs, who decides to run for political office. Let's just say, or if you're a doctor, communication is key. And so those are the kinds of things that begin early on. Those begins in those early years. And definitely by the time you're in high school, you know how to become, you should be a strong writer. You should be firm in that grammar and that composition. And if you're not, that's again one of the things that we do, and I think we do it very well, is making sure that our kids are able to function well in society. And part of that is knowing how to communicate. So that's the start. That's the start.
Yeah, I love
Hmm.
that, Kym. You talk
Hmm.
about preparation for college and career starts before high
It
school,
does.
in all sorts of different ways. Our
Hmm.
experience is a little bit different from
Hmm.
yours in that we are unschoolers or focused
Hmm.
on more self-directed education. So Molly didn't take a formal class or test until she was 13.
Right.
And then it was actually really interesting. She had attended a micro school before COVID. She and her siblings, a couple of days a week, self-directed
Hmm.
learning center with classes offered, but nothing required, and mostly focused on enrichment
Hmm.
and sort of building community with others. And then COVID hit, and
Hmm.
all of our, kind of city-based experiences went away
Hmm.
because everything was sort of shuttered. And that was really the trigger for Molly to say, oh, maybe I'll do some online classes. And that was sort of her
Right.
first entry point into formal education. She
Hmm.
loved learning and was always sort of doing academic things, but
Hmm.
never in a more formal or classroom-based
Hmm.
setting. And so it was through that process of taking some online classes, initially starting off with some part-time classes through ASU Prep Digital, Arizona State
Hmm.
University Prep
Hmm.
Digital,
Love them. Hmm.
which is now rebranded to ASU Global for sort of
Hmm.
out-of-state learners. Their
Hmm.
ASU Preps programs are tuition free for Arizona residents, but for those of us who are outside of Arizona, we're of course based in Massachusetts,
Yeah.
it's private pay, or in some
Hmm.
states, families can use their school choice dollars, education
Yeah.
savings accounts, and so forth.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, Molly started by taking a couple of
Hmm.
part-time online classes and really loved it, and then
Hmm.
decided to take sort of their full suite of high school classes,
Good for her.
and kind of following that
Hmm.
path,
Hmm.
and eventually adding university dual enrollment classes through
Hmm.
Arizona State University
Hmm.
itself, and now
Hmm.
through various community college dual enrollment
Yes.
partnerships this year.
Yeah.
And it became, and this is where I'd love to hear more from you. I
Hmm.
mean, Molly knew, sort of early on that she wanted to go to college.
Hmm.
Her plan is to study mathematics. She's always been
It's my
passionate
heart.
about math since
Hmm.
her earliest days,
Hmm.
and knew she wanted to go to a selective college. And so,
Hmm.
therefore, she knew she needed to take 4 years of a foreign language and
Hmm.
obviously 4 years of lab science and advanced
Right.
math classes and
Right.
4 years of English and all of that. I'm
Hmm.
curious what you're finding with your with Samuel and some of the other
Yeah.
students you work
Hmm.
with at Extend, that
Hmm.
kind of high school rigor
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
partnerships with community colleges. Maybe you
Yeah.
could talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, one thing I want to just circle back that you said that really touched me, and what it showed me and what I experienced as you were sharing Molly's story, what I sensed is that one of the things that you did as an unschooler was you gave her the gift of learning how to learn, right? And so because of that, I have no doubt. Of course, she said, "Oh, I think I can do this because she knew how to learn."
Right.
And that is so beautiful. I think sometimes we miss it when we think that it's always got to be this, I'm in the classroom, whatever. You don't. There's so much beauty in the unschooling model as well.
Right.
Um, And so for us, I will say one of the things, and this is not just with SAMO, but with it in our program, one of the things that we set the kids up to do is that no later than their senior year, but if they can do it in their junior year, they're dual enrolling. They're
Yes.
going to the local community college and they're getting the experience of what it's like to handle college level classes. They're getting the experience of interacting with those professors. They're getting the experience of, oh, I have a deadline to meet. I've got to turn this in at this time. Those are some of the more intangible things that happen when we are able to give our kids that dual enrollment experience. In addition to the fact that, of course, it builds their transcript. It
Yes.
makes them a much more desirable student because the colleges will look and say, well, wait a second, you didn't slack. You went ahead and took the initiative to go and take these college level classes to build up your high school transcript to earn those college credits. And because of that, they're now looking and saying, well, I think then absolutely you can handle our classes.
Yeah.
That when we're able to do that with our kids and they're able to experience those successes, it also gives them the confidence internally to know that, yep, I can handle college. Like our kids know without a doubt, we
Because
can
they're
handle
already
this.
doing it.
They're already doing it.
Yeah.
They don't have that. You hear so often that kids that, let's just say kids that are in the traditional model, they come to college level and all of a sudden they've got to figure it out. Well, one of the beauties of being a homeschooler, being outside of the traditional model, is that you're figuring it out every single day. You've learned the skills to how to figure it out. So when you get on the campus, you already know what you're doing. And so
Yeah,
that
and in
really is
many
beneficial.
cases, yeah, and in
Mhm.
many cases, Kym, these community college classes
Mhm.
could potentially transfer
Oh, they do.
to the four-year university or
Hmm.
college that a student chooses. Not
Yeah.
always, but
Yeah.
for many
Yeah.
colleges and universities, they'll accept at least some
Hmm.
of those credits.
Right.
And increasingly, there
Hmm.
are, these sort of robust transfer arrangements with community
Hmm.
colleges and
Yes.
four-year state universities that enable
Hmm.
transfer to the four-year university and
Yeah.
kind of sort of seamless transfer of credit as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
lots of advantages there.
Yeah.
I sort of feel like
Hmm.
community college and these dual enrollment arrangements,
Hmm.
homeschoolers have long known about this. This has been sort
Right.
of the best kept secret in the
Yeah.
homeschooling
Yeah.
world, and
Yeah.
it's just wonderful to see more and more people
Hmm.
realize the benefits,
Sure.
not only for the individual student, but also for affordability of college, for
Absolutely.
discovery of interests, and all of
Yes.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that you think about classes like English 1010. English 1010 is for the most part, is the same class everywhere you go. And so those are one of those classes that you'll find is easily transferable. Most colleges will accept that English 1010 because it's the same thing that they're teaching. One of the other things that we've found, all of my kids have done the dual enrollment. And in that orientation, one of the things that you'll find is that those instructors that are in that college, in that community college, are usually the same instructors. I know we found that out, are the same instructors that are at the University of Maryland.
Mm,
And so you're getting the same content with the same instructors, but you're getting it at a fraction of the cost.
yeah,
That is tremendous.
right, right.
Hmm.
Okay, so let's think. We're
Yeah.
we're talking about high school, well, pre-high school, but now high
Pre-high
school
school.
prep.
Hmm.
Thinking about
Hmm.
the kind of path
Hmm.
that your student might be on. Thinking about the
Sure.
type of college or university they may want to attend, and selecting
Hmm.
colleges
Yeah.
accordingly. Leveraging the resources around you, especially dual enrollment
Yes.
arrangements with community colleges and local
Yeah.
universities or online universities as
Hmm.
well. Now we have again something we didn't have the benefit of, Kym.
Right. Who
But
knew?
now,
Who knew?
students can be taking classes anywhere
Yeah.
from a variety of providers, including colleges and universities
Sure.
out of state online.
Sure. Hmm.
So, this brings us to sort of, let's say, the spring of junior year, unless you would
Hmm.
think that there might
Sure.
be a different timeline, which
Hmm.
is really when, at least from in my experience, when sort of Molly really started to think about,
Hmm.
okay, what do I want now for
Hmm.
my college list? What
Right.
are some of the places that I'm interested in, the programs? That was when
Hmm.
she really knew she wanted to study mathematics,
Mm-hmm.
and she wants to be in a city. Urban
Mm-hmm.
environment is important for her.
Figuring out the best
Large
fit.
university,
Mm-hmm.
ideally, although she's open to some other possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then started sort of thinking about that in spring of junior year, and
Mm-hmm.
also studying for and taking, in her case, the ACT
Mm-hmm.
exam. There's, of course, the
Mm-hmm.
ACT or the SAT
Right.
as college entrance exams. What was
Mm-hmm.
Samuel's experience in junior year
I
around
love
college
it.
and prep? Yeah.
I love it. I love it because listen, I hope the next thing that I say gives everybody hope. Everybody hope. Samuel had no idea what he wanted to do. Okay. So I want to hopefully dispel any myths that are out there that your child has got to know what they're going to do, especially that junior year so that they're ready to go. If you asked Samuel this time last year what he wanted to do, he'd have looked at you with a big question mark because he did not know. Now, however, he is 100%, he's got, there, the blinders on. He knows what he's doing. But again, I hope that that encourages folks to know that if they don't have it figured out, it's okay. They'll get there. They really will get there. So he didn't know. So what we did know though was that no matter what, he was going to, at the very least, he was going to spend 2 years at the community college, probably less because he dual enrolled, right? And figuring out what he wanted to do. And that was the initial plan. Our initial plan was take the first 2 years. That for many people, that is the least expensive way to
Yes.
figure it out. One of the things I like to say is why pay for your money when you can do the same thing on the community college level for easily half the price and sometimes less than half.
Yeah, and I'll just say briefly, I hear
Mm-hmm.
more from you, Kim, but I'll just say briefly, some states, including my state of Massachusetts, have now
Mm-hmm.
made community college free
Mm-hmm.
for the first 2 years, and then students can
Wow.
transfer again automatically into one of the state universities. So that means you're getting a 4-year university experience for half the cost. It just
Right there.
yeah, it just makes so
Mm-hmm.
much sense. And of course, if you started in high school, you have a leg up there. Sorry,
You
I didn't
do.
mean to cut you
No,
off,
no,
but
no,
I
no,
just
no,
wanted to
no,
say
no,
that it's
because
a
that's
great
good. Because
path.
right, and that's part of this whole, kind of we're mixing up and having this dialogue and having this conversation. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And so for Samuel, we knew, this senior year, he was going to be taking English 1010, English 1020. He also went ahead and took a history course. He gives me grief. Mom, I already did America. I'm like, yeah, but do it on the college level, So let me
Mhm.
just say that as well.
Yeah,
One of the beauties and again, putting yourself in the position of I'm going to apply for a college. Those colleges really do want to see that in your senior year you didn't slack off.
right.
So
Good
that senior
point. Yes.
year, you're taking those college classes, you're dual enrolling. That is another one of those benefits. They see, oh, you didn't just coast. No, you got serious. And so Samuel, again, took a college history class, took the college writing, both college writing classes. He's now doing a statistics class, all the things that signal to a university, oh, where he could have just kind of coasted his senior year, he's taking his education seriously. This is the kind of kid we want to take a second look at. Believe me, they're having those, because I've talked to them, they're having those kinds of conversations as they look at applications.
Yeah. And so, we're also in the age, kind of in
Mm-hmm.
the wake of COVID, of
Mm-hmm.
test optional admissions
Mm-hmm.
still, even today
Mm-hmm.
in 2025. Most colleges and
Yeah.
universities are test optional, meaning that
Yeah.
you don't have to
Right.
submit
Right.
an
Although some of
SAT or
that's changing.
ACT. Some of it's changing,
Yeah.
but still
Yeah.
most
Mm-hmm.
most are test optional.
Mm-hmm.
Among the more selective colleges, they
Mm-hmm.
are going back, many of
Right.
them, to
Right.
test required. But even there's
Yeah.
still some
Mm-hmm.
exceptions. So as I said, Molly studied for and took the ACT.
Mm-hmm.
That was the exam that she decided on. I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious about Samuel. Did
Yeah.
he do that as well?
So because Samuel decided last minute, right? He is taking the SAT in 2 weeks.
Ah,
So that's a whole right again. So when I talked initially when I said this is a year, this year with Samuel is there's a whole lot of firsts. None of my kids sat for the SAT. They didn't need to, and they didn't
yeah.
want to. Another thing too, I wanted to just tag on when you were talking about colleges that are test optional. You also have some colleges, you ready for this, that are also what we call test blind. They don't want
Yes.
the tests. They could care less. because they're not looking at that. They want to see who you are. And they don't believe that those tests are really reflective of how you're going to operate as a student on their campus. So yeah, Samuel was the
Really good
first.
point.
Yeah, Samuel was the 1st.
Well, I
Mm-hmm.
will just add a data point in here, Kym, that
Mm-hmm.
I think is another way to sort of encourage and provide hope for
Yes.
homeschoolers.
Mm-hmm.
Data from ACT.org, the
Mm,
organization that administers the ACT, reveal that both homeschooled and private schooled students have consistently scored well above their public school
yes.
peers on the ACT exam since
Mm-hmm.
2001. So
Yes.
nearly 25 years of data showing
Mm-hmm.
homeschoolers well above
Yeah.
their public school peers on the ACT exam.
Yeah. And I
Um,
love that as
yeah.
a homeschool mythbuster. I love
Yes.
that. I love that because so often the minute you say, "Oh, I'm homeschooled," or "I did something different," there's this image that's presented that they think, "Oh, you are less than," or "You didn't do." But when you've now got hard data that demonstrates that homeschoolers outperform, they are ahead of their public schooled peers. That says something. And the more that that is able to be elevated, the more that information is able to get out there. I believe that the more the public perception of homeschooling and non-traditional education can shift.
Yeah. Really great
Mhm.
point. So let's move ahead a little bit to the
Sure.
summer before senior year, the summer
Yeah.
in between junior and senior year. Maybe students are starting to think about which colleges are interesting them or
Mm-hmm.
interested to that they're
Mm-hmm.
interested in, or at
Sure. Yeah.
least um, the sort of location that might appeal to
Mm-hmm.
them. Do they
Mm-hmm.
want a small liberal arts college or a
Yep.
large research university?
Yeah.
What are sort of the different programs available? Do they have to
Mm-hmm.
apply to a specific college within a
Right.
university, like a school of
Mm-hmm.
engineering or a school of business? Or can
Mm-hmm.
they, apply more generally and then make
Mm-hmm.
decisions on majors later on after
Right.
they matriculate? All of
Right.
that
Right.
starts to happen in those
Mm-hmm.
months before the beginning of senior
Yeah.
year. I'll
Yeah.
just say that for Molly, the summer before senior year was really exciting for her. She had applied for the homeschool internship program in science and technology at
You wrote about that.
MIT,
You
the
wrote about that.
Massachusetts
So
Institute for
exciting.
Technology.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I just wrote about it in my Forbes column. I'll share a link
Excellent.
to that in the show notes because the applications for the HipSat program for this coming summer are open now for homeschooled teens ages 16 and up who have an interest in any STEM subject, science, technology, engineering, and math.
Mhm.
And it's a paid 10-week internship on MIT campus. This year, they also have
Great.
an opportunity in New York City in combination with uh, Cornell Medicine, the Cornell
Wow.
Medical School in New York
Wow.
City. So there's
Wow.
lots of great opportunities there. And Molly had such a great experience studying
Mhm.
microrobotics and working with graduate students and professors in the MIT labs.
Wonderful.
So I just love it because it just shows that there's so many opportunities for teens and especially
Yes.
homeschooled teens.
Yes, there are.
And
Mm-hmm.
this particular program, not to belabor it too much, but it was started by an MIT chemistry professor who joined MIT back in 2012, who was homeschooled himself in Virginia, then
Reaching back.
became a tenured professor of chemistry
Mm-hmm.
at MIT and wanted to give back, as you said.
I
And
love
he
it.
teamed up with a colleague of his who's also a
Mhm.
tenured professor in the Department of Chemical Engineering at MIT, who homeschools his own kids. And so the two of them decided to create this program because they felt like there was not a lot of
Yeah.
programs specifically for homeschooled
Mm-hmm.
students interested
Mm-hmm.
in lab sciences. So
So
that was a
exciting.
great experience for her.
So exciting.
I'd love to hear a little
Mm-hmm.
bit more from you about
Mm-hmm.
Samuel's experience and maybe your other children as
Mm-hmm.
well for that summer before senior year. It sounds like that's when
Yeah.
Samuel's interest really became solidified.
It did. It
Yeah.
did. For Samuel, he, we had talked in our tutorial, which I love, all of our instructors, they let us know, hey, I'm thinking about teaching this, I'm thinking about teaching that for the fall. And one of our instructors said, hey, I have my pilot's license. I am actually a certified instructional. I can teach the ground school, and I think I want to offer aviation for the
Hmm.
kids. And we were like, oh, absolutely. Because again, think about it. How many how many homeschool programs do you know of that offer aviation science?
Yes. Wow.
So, right. And so when Anna said that, I said, absolutely. And I shared that with Samuel, and Samuel was like, huh, let me think about that. And so over the summer, he started to really look into what would it look like if I would have a career in aviation? What would that require? What do I need to do? And to his credit, and I will share this, this is I love my son for this.
Mhm.
One of the things he said was, what would my family life look like?
Wow. Good job,
Right?
Mom.
Isn't that amazing?
I feel like that is such a great testament to how you've raised your kids to be
I take
family
no
centered.
credit.
Yeah,
Honestly, I take
well,
no credit. But when he said that to me, he says, well, Mom, I want to do that, but I also, again, the power, and I'm going to just let me go off the edge for a second. The power of what happens when we take ownership of our kids' education, we bring them home, the relationships that we're able to form with them, and then the lasting repercussions of that are phenomenal. Because what he said is, I want to be able to do this. I want to be able to provide my family, but I also want to be able to have the time to spend with my kids to get to know them the way that you did.
oh,
Can I tell you, like this mama's heart just went, ah. And
so
so
great.
that was one of his considerations. I want to look at something that I'm really interested in this. This is really, I'm looking at this and going, wow, this is really fascinating. And then what is this going to look like for me and for my family? And so he started doing the homework. And then he started to get, I want to say he literally fell in love with aviation. So much so. And then this goes back to when I was talking about how you with Molly, Molly learned how to love learning. She loved the
Yes.
learning process. Samuel started to go and joking, we call it jokingly, YouTube University, right? He went
Yeah.
up on YouTube and he started studying about aviation. He would follow these different instructors and he would literally would go on YouTube and literally take these YouTube classes to prepare for this aviation science class. So much so that when he first walked in, he had so much knowledge behind him because of the time that he had spent over the summer learning about aviation that he walked in with a leg up. And so of course, he's been excelling. He's been acing his classes, and he's so excited about getting his private pilot's license. But
Amazing.
that's what it looked like for him because he knew what he wanted. He knew what was inside of him that he wanted to do. And then he said, okay, how am I going to do this? And then he studied what's the best route. One of the things that he looked at and said, well, what would this look like if I was going to do it in the military? And so he thought about maybe I'll go and look into going to the Air Force Academy, going to the Navy Academy, flying planes. And what he discovered, one was that the window to do that had kind of passed, unless he wanted to delay, which he could have. But then the other piece of that was that he had to have that 2020 vision. And right now his is correctable to 2020. He's farsighted, not 2020. So he said, okay, so mom, that's not going to be an option for me. So because of that, I'm going to go this route instead. And so the whole idea that what we're talking about is thinking through what's going to be the best fit for our kids in
Yes.
terms of colleges, in terms of universities. I love how you were saying, and these are the things that we consider. Is my kid a city kid or is my kid a country kid? So my son, one of the schools that he's looking at is Kent State University. Okay. He's looking at a number of colleges that are near cities, and because he likes the idea of I kind of want to be on campus, but I want to have the opportunity to go out and explore the city if I want to do that, if it's not that far away. So those are all the things that come into building that initial list. I know we're sort of moving into that area right now, but those are the things that you consider. I will also share with you really quickly about Sarah, because I want to talk about Sarah, the kid, my child before, who's up at Peabody now. Her
Peabody
summer,
at Johns Hopkins
Peabody, right,
University.
Peabody at Johns
Yes.
Hopkins University. Yes, I need to specify. People don't realize Peabody is the music conservatory of Johns Hopkins University. Yes.
Yes. Very
She's
impressive, Kym.
there, and that is just wow. Thank God. But she's on a full scholarship there. And she's one of those students that discovered her, just like Samuel discovered that gift late in the game. She took her very first music education class as a in the spring of her junior year of high school as a dual enrolled student. She went right to the local community college and said, okay, I think I want to take my first. She'd never taken a music class before. She never. She sang a little at home, a little in church, but she'd never taken a formal music class. She took that formal music class and they saw something. They saw a gift in her.
Hmm.
And over the next year, she continued to dual enroll and was taking music classes there. And they were the ones that said, listen, you're so good. You need to go someplace that can really hone that talent. And here she is at Peabody. By the way, getting ready to
Amazing.
go sing in Vienna, Austria over the summer. So these
Ah,
are the things, right? But these are the things that happen, I believe, when we give our students, our children room to grow and to discover what they love. And we take off these artificial barriers that are around them and say, what do you want? What do you like? What passions do you have? What inspires you? And then let them follow that. And
yeah.
we have that opportunity.
Can I
Mhm.
ask you then, Kym,
Yeah,
sort of a how-to, how do you
sure.
recommend parents find that homeschooling parents specifically find that balance between sort of pushing your children or
Hmm.
encouraging them, to take on more course rigor and so forth, and
Hmm.
keeping that kind of relaxed
Yeah.
freedom and flexibility that sort of defines
Yeah.
homeschooling. How do you
Hmm.
suggest families look at that?
So I'm going to say that everything begins and ends with the relationship that you build with your children. That's that's really where that is. It begins and ends with that relationship that you build with your kids. And you create that safe environment for them that says, sweetie, you can do whatever you want to do. And when you have that relationship with them, that safety and that love, they know that you love them no matter what. If they didn't do well on that, that's okay. That's not the end of the world. I still love you. You're still my daughter. You're still my son, and I'm still going to support you. Then what that allows, see, it's both. When you have that relationship, then it does give you the ability to push a little bit. Okay. I will share with you, my son, I love that we're talking about this. My oldest son, Joshua, this past Thanksgiving said, and when we go around the room saying what we're thankful for, he says, I'm thankful that I had a nagging mom. What? But that goes to your very question, Carrie. That goes to your very question about there being a balance between there's a nagging there, but then there's grace there. There's that relationship there. What he went on to say was, because I had a nagging mom, I ended up going to the college of my dreams, and it's just been a blast. I graduated from the Art Institute of Virginia Beach with this degree that I never thought would have been possible if I hadn't had a mom that was just a little bit naggy for me, that kind of made me go to this open house. If it wasn't for then he said, and if it wasn't for my mom nagging, I wouldn't be at my absolute dream job at Museum of the Bible. But all of that came from having a relationship with your kids. I'm going to say this, and I hope I don't offend anybody, but if all you're looking to do is just get them to check off the box and you're sending them on their way, then you're missing it. Part of the beauty of homeschooling is being able to learn your students, to learn your kids, and to be able to build that relationship with them that's going to carry you for a lifetime. And when you build that relationship, when you spend time with them, when you ask them questions, hey, what do you think about this? And you start to get into their world, then what happens is that they'll reciprocate that and allow you to be pushy every once in a blue moon. But you're doing it not in a way that's, making them feel bad or not in a way that's condemning them, but you're doing it from a position of love because I love you and I want the best for you. And they know that they're going to sense that right away, whether or not that's genuine. But again,
Yeah.
it's the relationship.
Yeah, and I think some of it's just
Hmm.
exposure, right? Just being able
Sure.
to share information and knowledge with our
Hmm.
teens,
Yeah.
that these are the different pathways. We just have more life experience. So we might be
Right.
able to say, have you thought about
Right.
this? Or this is a
Hmm.
particular program that's
Sure.
interesting.
I think the other thing too is I think it's also be as parents being willing to listen to them and learn from our kids.
Yes.
I think that's so important. Sometimes we forget. We forget, oh, I'm or many years old, right? And I've got so many years on you. But you and I, we know we're lifelong learners. And why can't we also be lifelong learners of our kids? Allow our kids to teach us. That's part of that. And
Yeah.
that again opens up the door. where you can find that beautiful balance with them.
I love that. So, we're going to have our second episode
Yeah.
focus entirely on the application process, specifically looking at the Common App. So, stay tuned for
Yeah.
that next. But, as we kind of wrap up this episode,
Mhm.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about how Samuel came to decide on that initial 16 college list.
Sure.
What were
Oh,
some of his
beautiful.
priorities?
Great question. And I love that you asked this. And he was the one, again, he drove, he was in the driver's seat for this one. When he said, Mom, I'm going to become a commercial airline pilot, I was like, great. Then what he did is he went to every airlines and went to the websites of every airlines and discovered and found, because he said, I know there's a relationship there. He found out that these airlines have relationships with universities.
Hmm.
And so he went
Wow.
to each airlines and went to find out what universities they have relationships with, and he wrote down every single one of them. And then and he went to literally every single one of them. And from there, he started this list. And then from that list, he said, okay, so where are they located? And how many, then he said, how many of these airlines picked from this college? The thing that blew me away was Kent State was one of the number one colleges that almost every airlines drew from. And so who knew? And then as he developed his list, he would go to the schools and find out their programs and come to find out Kent State has one of the top aviation programs in the country.
Hmm.
Another one was Embry-Riddle. And yes, he applied to both of those colleges. And by the way, to get it. But I'm saying, but that's how he did it. He said, I know what I want to do. I'm going to go to the industry that supports that and let me find out what they're looking for. Where do they go to find their pilots? And those schools, those are going to be the ones that are going to be on my initial round of list. And then from there, I'm going to whittle it down up and then from there, I will say that, and this is also maybe we'll get a little bit into when we talk more
Yeah.
about the college application process. Then he started looking at colleges and saying, okay, what are your requirements? Does this kind of meet my what I want to do? There was one, I will say there's one college that came off the list because he called them and they didn't even know, "Well, we don't really even have an email. You've got to mail your transcript in." He was like, you don't what? No, next. But that's one of the things that we're able to teach our kids how to do. And I really do. I do credit that to being homeschooled, is that agency that, okay,
Yes.
I can do this. I'm going to go ahead and make those phone calls. He did all of that of his own volition. He blew me away. But I
I
will
love
say
that.
that I believe with everything in me, that came from the fact that we homeschooled our kids and taught them how to learn and taught them how to go after what they wanted to go
Yeah,
after.
I love that initiative on Samuel's part.
Hmm.
And so just to be clear, Kym,
Hmm.
so that Samuel's looking into a BA program in aviation at a 4-year college
Right,
or university that then would lead to a job at a
right.
major commercial airlines.
Right.
That's how it would work.
Yeah, and actually these colleges actually they have private piloting programs.
Wow.
These every university that's on his list has a private piloting program. And what that program is designed to do is prepare them to become commercial airline pilots. So in that, they're going to get all of the hours that they need. They'll get all the, and believe me, at this point, I'm kind of almost talking over my head. My son knows this stuff more than I do because he's
Yeah.
the one, but he'll get all the ratings that he needs, all the things that he needs so that when he's done, these airlines are going, okay, we want you to come and fly for us. That's it.
So he'll have that certification as well
Yes.
as a bachelor's
Yes.
degree.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, So, sort of similar for Molly. Obviously,
Yeah.
she knew she wanted to study mathematics and wanted, as I said,
Mm-hmm.
a large university. She wanted something in the city.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, she narrowed it down to really wanting to stay in the Northeast,
Mm-hmm.
where sort of nearer to home. I
Mm-hmm.
say that though, but she did, as I mentioned, take kind of a full set of online high school and dual enrollment college classes through
Mm-hmm.
Arizona State University's
Mm-hmm.
online program. And so as a result of that, she did apply directly to ASU as sort of
Yay.
her, quote unquote, safety school
Yeah.
in and got back. They do rolling admissions at ASU. So
Mm-hmm.
she got that first college acceptance in
Mm-hmm.
September from them, which was just nice to
Yay.
kind of have
Yeah.
under her belt,
Mm-hmm.
even though, she decided she didn't want to go that far away
Right.
from home.
Right.
But it was nice to have. I wonder if,
Mm-hmm.
Samuel had anything similar kind of in that early fall
Yes.
stage.
Yes, yes. So again, through that list, he knew right away. He says, "Okay, I'm going to apply." So he did. And even though, and I will tell you, for us, Samuel, Samuel's also one of my kids that is one of those deep divers, right? So he'll deep dive into things. And he was looking for some, so he didn't do the early admissions, but he did the regular admissions, and then a number of those colleges do have the rolling admissions, right?
Yeah.
And so he did. He said, I want to go here. He looked at Kent, he looked at Embry-Riddle, he applied to both of those. And those were some of the first, literally the very first yeses that he got, the first acceptances that he got.
So
And so,
great.
yeah, and that for our kids, when they get that first one, talk about confidence booster, talk about, you know, any questions for us as parents. Did we do this right? Even though he is number five, I'm going to be really transparent. Always in the back of your head, because you hear other people. And one of the things that I've really been teaching other people to fight hard against is those other voices, those other naysaying voices, to know that, yep, you are doing the best for your kids. And then when you have something like this happen, when you have those acceptances, it's almost like that stamp. Yep, yep, I am doing the best. Yep, I am doing the best. And so for our kids too, for them, it's a yep, we've got this. We've got this. And you'll see them, and that's what I've noticed in Samuel, with every acceptance, more and more
Yes.
confidence. Okay, I can do this. And so he's now on, I would say he's on top of the world right now. But that's one of those beautiful things that happens during this process, especially when you're coming from somebody that's coming from a place where you're outside of the traditional model.
So true, Kim. And of course, we're going to
Mhm.
talk quite a bit more about
Yeah,
acceptances and later decisions, which
sure.
school Samuel and
Hmm.
Molly ultimately choose later in this series. I think this is a good closing spot
Yeah.
now for us with sort of the pre-application process, and we'll
Yeah.
come back again with our second episode in this series of homeschooling to college, talking about fall of senior year applications. And we'll talk about
Hmm.
a little bit more about rolling admissions, direct admissions, which we didn't talk about
Right.
today. We could talk a little about that. And
Hmm.
then early action, early decision
Hmm.
timelines, regular
Hmm.
decision, which is the round that most students are participate
Sure.
in, and is the sort of
Hmm.
the larger round of the schools
Yeah.
where applicants start to hear
Hmm.
typically March time
Hmm.
frame, so kind of coming up on that as well.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
lots
That's
of good
exciting.
things to come, Kim.
Yeah.
But you started your remarks today
Hmm.
talking about how this series is really about providing hope to
Yes.
homeschool families. I want to give
Yes.
you the last word then on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It is my heart that anyone who is watching this, people watch this series that we're doing, that they're inspired to know that number one, they absolutely don't have to stop homeschooling their kids at eighth grade, that once eighth grade is done, they can continue to do this, and that they do have the opportunity to graduate their kids onto whatever college, whatever university, whatever trade school, whatever business, whatever it is that their kids want to do, they are absolutely fully equipped to do this. I also want to give them the hope to know that it's doable. It's doable from a parent standpoint. Sometimes we think, oh my goodness, college, it's this insurmountable task because you're used to having it done, or most kids are used to having it done by a guidance counselor in the traditional setting. And we're here to show you and help you have hope to know that yes, you can do this. And it's not nearly as difficult. Yeah, it's going to be some work, but so is homeschooling. Homeschooling is work. And so we're just, shifting it a little bit and applying the same things that we were doing as homeschoolers now to the college application process, and to really give you hope to know that it's possible. And also, if your kid decides, the summer of their senior year, going into their senior year, oh, now all of a sudden I want to do that, you're not too late. You can always do this with your kids. Please, please, please know that it's possible. And I'm so excited that we get to share our journeys. We get to bring you along with our journeys so that you can see firsthand in real time that it is absolutely possible. You can do this, and your kids can do whatever it is that they want to do. And it's going to be a great opportunity. It's going to be a great experience for both of you as you go through this process.
Ah, what a great place to end on, Kym. Thank you so much for
Thank
being here
you.
for this first episode of
Thank
what
you.
promises to be a great series on homeschooling to college.
Yeah.
Kym Kent, thanks again for being on the
Thank you,
Liberated
Kerry.
podcast.
Thank you for having me.